We're sticking with West Africa because the world is watching in amazement as military uprising against civil rules are popping up across West Africa, Chad, Mali, and Guinea, with other coup attempts in Niger, Burkina Faso, and elsewhere. Heads of ECOWAS countries are rattled from Nigeria to Ghana and beyond. The regional body has imposed severe financial, economic, and trade sanctions on some of the military junta. But what is the wider economic cost of this rout of insurgent military coup in an already fragile region? Arise News political editor Sumner Sambo joins me live from our Abuja studios to discuss this. Good evening, Sumner. Let's get this conversation started. The West African region is already a fragile one with insurgent actors like ISWAP. How much more damage would you think these military coups will wreak on Chad, Mali, and other economies?
Thank you, Bosun. Good evening to you and our viewers. The anticipated damage will be in terms of these countries getting support from other bigger countries in the world. I mean, we've got Western countries trying to stay back and watch what's happening. And while that is going on, we also have some sort of challenges with the way the Western world is actually dealing with this coup. So sometimes they decide not to intervene directly, but after a certain period of time, you will see that they will embrace some of these coup plotters. And it's been a mixed grill, actually. In the areas where they don't embrace them, you'll see that the leaders of the military junta will actually embrace other countries, like we are having in Mali at the moment, where the Malian government, military government, has now decided to embrace Russia in the absence of France. And that is sending lots of mixed signals. It's a very difficult development for West Africa at this point because, for example, Mali is trying to see how it can maneuver through the sanctions imposed by ECOWAS, and those economic sanctions have been biting at the moment. If you look at the way France has behaved in Mali, it's actually different from the same way France is behaving in Chad. So while France is embracing the Chadian military head, it is kicking aside the Malian military head. So you will not want to wonder what sort of parameters the Western countries are using in dealing with some of these heads of the military junta. And if you look at what's going on outside West Africa, especially in Sudan, you see that it's also a mixed grill. Actually, since August, when Mali began with this intrusion of coups in West Africa, it's been a very tough one. And the ECOWAS leaders, if you listen to them on Thursday, were actually saying that that intrusion it gave birth to the ones that we've seen in Guinea, and then, of course, the one in Burkina Faso, and then the attempted coup in Guinea-Bissau. So it's a very sad development that will continue to bite on the economies because these Western countries will stay back, and as they are staying back, the rest of the world is also watching to see what will happen next.
Interesting, Sumner, when you look at West Africa is home to most of the military coups in Africa, and in terms of economic progress. But again, the United Nations has identified extreme poverty as a key factor for social unrest here in West Africa. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree to that assertion, but don't forget the primary commodities being produced in these countries also play a key role. Some of these commodities being produced are exported outside these countries. So once commodity prices actually go lower globally, there's a big challenge against governments, especially across West Africa, where they only deal on raw commodities. So no matter how good a government is generally, if you're unable to bring in more foreign exchange into your country, you're unable to bring in more development because of the biting finances of the government, there's no how you won't lose out of this game. And when you lose out, there's a social discontent among the populace, there's an uprising among people, and eventually it will be linked to poverty, and then your government will be overthrown by the military. But the bad side of it is that the military guys think that they are coming into government to come and find solutions. In the world that we live in this time around, it's no longer fashionable for us to have coups succeed. But even when the coups succeed, the military junta will discover that it's a tough call being able to get the resources to run the country. This is what is happening in Mali. This is what's happening in Burkina Faso at the moment. And this is what's happening in Guinea. Yes, they've taken over these governments, but they've now discovered that some of those governments actually had challenges in running the country, in running these countries due to the fluctuation of commodity prices globally. And the other aspect of it is that, yes, democracy was tampered with, for example, in Guinea, where the constitutional limit was extended. But even then, the challenge now is why ECOWAS, for example, didn't rise up to Alpha Conde when he was violating the constitution. But when there was a military takeover, ECOWAS was quick to impose sanctions. So in all of this, yes, poverty is at the heart of it. A lot of people are becoming poorer, but if the governments don't have the finances to run this, to run their countries due to depreciating prices of commodities, primary commodities, which they depend upon, what will they do?
Well, a number of these countries actually produce, Mali, for example, produce gold. There are others that produce gold, some of them very raw commodities. There's cotton produced in Burkina Faso and Mali and Chad and a few other areas.
Yeah, I mean, like Guinea and all of that. Guinea is very, very rich.
Yes, these are rich, resource-rich countries, Sumner. Tell me what I don't know. Extreme poverty, lack of economic development, food insecurity, all of this, lack of education.
Yeah, a lot of these countries have gone into some sort of military misadventure also, spending more on the military rather than trying to spend more on the people. And as long as these governments are not emphasizing on poverty eradication, building institutions, and then opening up their economies to private investment, they will continuously find themselves in this kind of big challenge that we have right now. Yes, military adventurism is no longer acceptable, but sometimes when governments fail to live up to their responsibilities, you cannot but, see this kind of military intervention. Yes, these countries may be rich in terms of natural resources, but the riches are being controlled by other Western countries. For example, the role of France in Mali cannot be set aside. The same Mali has this gold and all of that. The same Guinea has all these rich natural resources, but who's pulling the strings? And when these countries now want to fight for the soul of their resources, you will see that the Western powers are beginning to intrude.
But this
for example, powers, you take a look at how
these Western powers, the US, Washington, Paris, Brussels, others, they keep pumping aid into these same countries in West Africa that are still now politically, militarily destabilized.
Yes, but aid is not the solution. The solution is investment. A lot of the resources being taken from these countries need to actually be fully accounted for, because some of the gold you're talking about right now in Mali, I mean, since the intrusion of France through the Operation Barkhane in 2013, there's been a lot of revelation saying that a lot of resources are leaving the country unaccounted for. And that's why you see that Colonel Assimi Goïta, upon taking power, has been trying to push aside France. He's trying to see how he can consolidate efforts and ensure that the Malian society is one that is able to control its own resources. And that's definitely what France doesn't like. But the approach he's actually taking towards it is what a lot of people are even afraid for him. You can see that he has escaped being killed almost like about 2 times now, one in the mosque and all of that, because of his nationalism. Yes, there's this spirit of nationalism to actually want to be in control of your natural resources, but it has to be done in such a way that, you carry along those who have always been there. So it's been a very difficult call as to how these countries can manage their resources without the influence of their former colonial powers.
Now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 countries, successful military coup, others who attempted coups. Now countries such as Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone and others that are stable can sleep very well at night because their neighbors are in some photos, they're not sleeping, they're fragile, they're a military crew. So do you think this will have a major impact on these economies, very briefly?
Yes, definitely it will, because, for example, if you look at the role of ECOWAS, it's actually to integrate a regional economy together. And so if you're cutting out these countries by imposing sanction on Burkina Faso, imposing sanction on Mali, for example, it affects the trade within these countries, because ECOWAS is predominantly an economic bloc before it becomes, a political bloc and all of that. So yes, there are fears that actually these coups coming back will affect not just trade and politics, but even the movement of persons across the sub-region. So it's a very big challenge for leaders of ECOWAS to actually stand up. In Nigeria, for example, democracy has stabilized because no one tries to tamper with term limits. But I can tell you that if we have the same situation whereby anyone in power wants to tamper with the term limits as guaranteed by the Constitution, in one way or the other, you see that there's a big challenge and uproar. And that's why you've seen that President Muhammadu Buhari has consistently said that he is going to ensure that he lives up to the sanctity of the Constitution. Once you do that and then you guarantee an atmosphere for investment, it becomes much easier for people to believe in you and then grow your economy. And then, of course, it will affect the sub-region generally.
Sumner Sambo, Arise News political editor, thank you so much for your insight.